Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are inside right now. We're actually in my bedroom because that's where I happen to be when I'm filming this. But I wanted to talk today not about the barking dog. Shh. I wanted to talk today about incubating quail eggs, Coturnix quail eggs to be specific, because that's what I have here. So your eggs, just pick one up. My fingers don't want to do it. So your eggs look like so. Coturnix hatching eggs all look like this. Hatching eggs, eating eggs, this is what they look like. Unless you have the celadon, which are the blue eggs, all Coturnix quail eggs look the same. It doesn't matter what color the Coturnix quail are, it doesn't matter. They all look the same. There is a dog barking. We're going to ignore him. That's Whiskey. So we're going to talk today, we're going to do several short videos about how you go about hatching these. Because everybody wants to turn these cute little eggies into chicks. So you absolutely can do that. So incubating your own eggs requires fertile eggs. You might have your own fertile eggs, okay? Or you might need to purchase some. So I have my own fertile eggs because I have male and female Coturnix quail. And they lay eggs. My females lay eggs quite frequently. These are from one specific hen, these 6. She laid all 6 of these this week, and I want one specific hen. I want her babies because she's quite pretty. So that's why we only have 6. They're going in a group together, all alone, nothing else, just because I want to hatch from that hen. So I have my own, but you might have to buy some. Buying locally is better. So if you don't have your own eggs and you have to buy some, see if you can buy locally so you don't have to ship them. You can have them shipped. Shipping is easier if you're shipping eggs versus chicks. We have talked about shipping chicks before. Shipping eggs is easier, and you can definitely hatch shipped eggs. I've done it many, many times. So with shipped eggs, as long as they're not completely shaken up, like really completely busted or broken, then there should be okay. Hatching eggs that have been shipped will have a lower hatch rate. That's just the way it is. But you should still get a few chicks out of a dozen eggs, provided they haven't been frozen or roasted. So don't order hatching eggs when it's really hot out or when it's cold out. You don't want your eggs freezing, and you don't want them exposed to hot temperatures. So if a hot day would make you sweat, the temperature's too high to ship eggs. Okay? So whether you have your own eggs, which I have, or whether you shipped in eggs, the process is basically the same. There are 1 or 2 minor differences, which I'll talk about when we talk about setting the eggs, which will be in the next video. But mostly it's the same. Ignore Whiskey barking. He and Tequila are playing. So, what else do you need to know about the eggs that you are going to hatch? Okay. You do not wash your eggs. I know some people will swear by it. They'll tell you, oh, I always wash my eggs. Or they will say they like to put hydrogen peroxide on their eggs or do a Listerine wash. You don't have to do any of that. And in fact, quite a few studies show that that either has no effect on your hatch rate or it'll lower it a little bit. So you absolutely do not have to wash your eggs at all. Okay? You can pick off any chunks of poop or anything or dirt, because my quail tend to lay in the mud, so sometimes there's a little mud on them. So you can pick off any mud. Whiskey? Whatever. They're not fighting. They're playing. And they're tugging on a dinosaur toy. I think that's a dragon toy. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So anyway, do not wash your eggs. Pick off chunks of dirt or poop. No problem, but don't wash them. Eggs that are laid by your hens, whether they're chicken or quail or peacock, doesn't matter, they have a bloom on them, which is a barrier that protects the developing embryo from bacteria that might try to penetrate that shell. So it might try to get into that egg and damage your little chickies. So you want to maintain that bloom. The way to maintain that bloom is not to get your eggs wet. So don't wash your eggs, and you should be good. Okay, picking eggs to incubate. You may have a selection. So if you have multiple eggs that you can incubate, you want to pick ones that are relatively clean. So it's okay if they have a little stuff on them, you can pick it off. But if they're really soiled, you want to pass. Don't try and hatch those unless they're duck eggs. But we're not talking about ducks. We're talking about quail. So quail eggs should not be super soiled. If you do try to hatch a really soiled egg, what can happen is the bacteria from that poop can spread bacteria into the embryo. Okay, so you don't want that to happen. That'll just kill your eggs. Use cleaner eggs if you can, and they should be about an average size. So you see I have 6 eggs that are relatively the same size. She did lay a 7th, but it was really, really small, so I'm not even going to try to hatch it. Try to use ones that are roughly the same size. Don't hatch the tiny eggs, and the large ones tend to have trouble hatching anyway. Average eggs only, and they do need to be intact and generally look like an egg. So you don't want a super weird shape. Okay, you generally want egg shapes. Okay, I have trouble picking eggs up. But you generally want egg shape. Generally, that's what you want. You don't want really odd shapes. The really odd shapes really shouldn't be hatched. You want to avoid ones that really are super torpedo-like or anything like that. You want an egg shape. So, storing your eggs before you hatch them. You probably are not going to stick eggs in the incubator every day. Instead, you're going to collect them. I like to collect over about a week, and I like to put them in these containers. So you do not want an airtight container. You'll notice this is not airtight. This has nice big gaps. You do not want it airtight. You do not want to completely enclose your egg. But you do still want to not let them dry out. So you don't want to use eggs that are too old. And you want to store your eggs pointy side down. Okay? So hatch the freshest eggs you can. I like to collect over about a week. You're probably okay up to 2 weeks old, even maybe 3 weeks. After that, your fertility rate will really drop. Now, I have hatched eggs that were up to 6 weeks old. The hatch rate was really low. I think I only got 2 chicks out of 12 when I hatched eggs that old. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Okay? So again, store your eggs pointy eggs side down. Okay? In a cool and slightly humid location. You don't want these eggs to dry out. If they dry out, they're not going to hatch. So you also want to make sure that they are turned. I don't mean like flipped over. What I mean is you can store them on turners. I generally don't because my turners are usually in use in my incubators. So I don't have turners laying around right now. So because I don't have turners laying around, what I'm going to do is I like to just rock my carton a couple of times a day. So in the morning, I stick a book under one end, like that. Okay? Come the evening, I rotate it, just like that, and let that sit. And I just do that twice a day. That just keeps the yolk from sticking to the shell. It is important to keep that yolk from sticking to the shell. You don't want your chick developing stuck to the inside of the shell, because best case scenario, he'll hatch deformed. Worst case scenario, he's not going to hatch at all. So do keep your eggs moving while you're waiting for your incubator to be free. It's quail eggs, so I set quail eggs on Tuesdays because I like weekend hatches. Quail eggs take 17 days to hatch. Okay? We'll talk about that again later, but when planning out your hatch day, plan for 17 days from now. So if I put my eggs in on a Tuesday, they won't hatch for 17 days, which means hatch date is late Friday and into Saturday. Now, is that an exact number? Of course not. We'll talk more about that later, but 17 days is a guess. So, I do want to talk about a little terminology because I actually said the wrong word earlier. I said fertile and I meant fertilized. So, I just want to talk about the difference between the words fertile and fertilized. So, all eggs with a yolk, and these all have a yolk inside them, all eggs with a yolk are fertile. If a hen lays an egg, whether it's a peacock or a chicken or a quail or whatever it is, it's fertile. It's fertilized if a male has done his job and mated with the hen before the egg was laid, and then this can turn into a chicken or a quail or a peacock or a duck or a turkey or whatever you're hatching. So these will turn into quail, obviously, because they're quail eggs. So these are fertilized because I have a fertile male in with my females, with this particular female. So fertile is pretty much all eggs. Fertilized is eggs that were fertilized by a male. Okay, we say the wrong word, but it is kind of important to know the difference. You do absolutely need a male if you want your birds to lay fertilized eggs. Okay? Hatching requires fertilized eggs. You do not need a male for your bird to lay eggs. You do need a male for your bird to lay fertilized eggs. All right, so if you don't have a male, don't even try to use your own eggs. Order some hatching eggs. So that's about all we're going to talk about today. I just want to talk about getting started. And in the next video, which will probably post next week, I will talk about how to set these eggs in your incubator. I'm also going to talk a little bit about incubators themselves, but I'm not going to do that right now in the interest of making videos that are not super long, because I could make a video about hatching and talk about it for hours. And we're not going to do that. So just this short video getting you started. Store your eggs correctly, pointy side down, rotate them irregularly twice a day, and be very gentle with quail eggs. They crack so easily, so handle them with kid gloves because they will crack. It's really, really easy. So that's about it for us here today. We'll see you tomorrow.